By the time the third city truck rumbled up to Mara Kensington's house, her front yard looked less like landscaping and more like a botched forensic investigation. Orange cones clustered around her driveway. Yellow caution tape draped across her marble steps like someone was staging a dramatic arrest. Two workers in hard hats stood knee-deep in her rose garden, loudly debating where to cut the concrete channel that was about to permanently bisect her pristine lawn. "What do you mean, easement?" Mara shrieked. "This is a luxury home in Maple Crest Estates. You can't just carve a trench through my front yard." The city inspector barely bothered lifting his clipboard. "Ma'am, under the court order, the property is now the designated primary stormwater detention site for the subdivision." I watched from across the street. Leaning on the fence of my half-flooded orchard, rain boots still muddy, Mara's dream homed her marble, her manicured hedges. Her precious symmetry was rapidly transforming into the centerpiece of Birch, Hollow's newest public works overhaul. "You." She screamed the second she spotted me. "You did this," I smiled. "No, Mara. This is called compliance. I'm Ethan Crowell, 38, widower, and owner of a small apple and pear orchard on the edge of Birch Hollow, Oregon. My family's held this land for 3 generations. My life used to be simple. Wake up at dawn, walk the rows, check the irrigation lines, log into my remote CAD drafting job, and go to bed smelling like dirt and leaves. Then Maple Crest Estates appeared, an overpolished subdivision that sprouted on the hill above my orchard. The developer crammed as many houses as the zoning board would tolerate and handed them off to a homeowners association. And at the head of that HOA stood Mara Kensington, early 50s, always in a tennis skirt, always with a Bluetooth clipped to her ears, someone who could look at a sunset and complain that the orange didn't match the approved palette. We had no reason to interact. My orchard wasn't part of Maple Crest. I had no HOA, no bylaws, no committees breathing down my neck. And then the drainage problems began, the morning after a heavy rainstorm. I walked out to find half my lower trees standing in a shallow, murky lake. I followed the water uphill. At the back fence where my orchard touched Maple Crest, I found a freshly carved channel in the soil, neatly lined with stone and plastic sheeting. It emptied directly onto my land. Already full, already overflowing. And right beside it, directing a landscaping crew like a dictator of drainage, stood Mara. "Morning," I called. "You know your runoff is dumping into my orchard, right?" She gave me a single fast, dismissive once-over. "Oh, you must be the farm person." "Orchardist," I corrected. "And this pond is flooding my trees." She flicked her hand as if brushing away lint. "Civil engineer said we needed more detention volume. HOA approved it." "That map is wrong," I said. "Your pond is sitting right against my property line, and that spillway is carved straight onto my land." "Well, where else is it supposed to go?" she snapped. "Can't have water pooling near the homes." I stared at her. "So your solution was to drown my orchard instead?" "It's just water," she said. "Trees like water. You're welcome." Over the next week, every heavy rain turned my lower rows into a swamp. Lost a dozen young trees in the first month alone. I tried going through the usual channels. The city said they'd schedule an inspection. Meanwhile, Mara escalated. I caught her in a crew cutting my fence. "We have an easement," she said. "No, you don't," I said. She smiled sweetly. "Well, we do now. The board voted last night." The paperwork she handed me was a fake, unofficial-looking drainage easement form with my name already signed in wobbly cursive that wasn't even close to mine, plus a letter declaring I was out of compliance and an invoice demanding I pay my share of the pond construction costs. I took it straight to the city. Inspector Dana stood at the fence staring at my drowned trees. "They really did all this without your permission?" "They forged an easement," I said. She snorted. "This isn't recorded anywhere. This is going to be a big problem for them." But government wheels grind slow. By the time the city scheduled a hearing, I had lost an entire lower block of orchard. Then Mara made the mistake that turned this from annoying to terminal for her anyway. The city issued a violation notice, ordering the HOA to stop using the pond. Mara had someone rip the notice off the bulletin board and told residents it was just routine paperwork. Then she escalated again. I came home one Tuesday to find a brand new trench gouged 30 yards into my orchard on open concrete channel, with wooden forms still strapped in place. The crew said the HOA president hired them. The next day during a downpour, the trench collapsed. It undercut my slope and sent a wall of water and silt roaring down. Trees. Toppled trees, collapsed fencing. My irrigation pump was half buried in mud. The city escalated the situation to the State Environmental Quality Department. When they realized the runoff was dumping untreated into the creek, which made it a regulated environmental violation, a week later, Mara received a visit from the city stormwater inspector, a state environmental officer, and a detective from the county DA's office. They had questions, lots of them, about unpermitted drainage work, forged signatures, and why she'd expanded construction after receiving a stop work order. Mara tried to bluff. "We are a private association. We followed our bylaws." Detective held up the easement. "And whose signature is this?" She hesitated. "The farmer's. Ethan," he agreed. "Funny," the detective said, "because he was in a city meeting at the exact time this says you two signed together. And this signature? It doesn't match anything on record." The state officer added, "Ma'am, you're responsible for illegal discharge into a protected waterway. And if you lied on these documents, that becomes a much larger issue." Mara immediately blamed everyone else. Unfortunately for her, emails exist. The city subpoenaed the HOA's records. They found threads where Mara wrote, "We don't need the farmer's signature. The county never checks. If he complains, we'll fine him until he shuts up." Spoiler, I got a lawyer, my attorney. Jordan Pike flipped through everything and said, "They're about to have a very bad time." The city issued formal violations. The state filed non-compliance notices. The DA opened a forgery investigation centered squarely on Mara. Panic tore through Maple Crest. At an emergency meeting, homeowners confronted her. "You forged his signature. Why are we paying the fines? You basically rerouted a river into his backyard." The city inspector explained that the HOA was responsible for restoring my property, paying environmental penalties, and funding a permanent stormwater solution. "And who pays for that?" someone asked. "Typically the HOA," Dana said. "Meaning, all of you." Every eye swung toward Mara. The board stripped her of signatory authority. The DA offered her a deal if she cooperated. Jordan filed a civil suit for trespass, property damage, and fraud. Engineers redesigned the drainage system. They had options: build an expensive underground system, buy my land at my price, or designate an alternative detention site on HOA property. Guess whose house sat on the lowest point? Built directly over the natural drainage path? Mara's. Dana traced the lines on the subdivision map. "The most efficient stormwater detention site is here." She circled Mara's property. "Absolutely not." Mara burst out. "You can't use my property." Jordan cleared his throat. "Your home sits on HOA land subject to common area use under your own. The CC and ours, the same ones you weaponized against everyone else." She blanched. "You can't do this." Jordan smiled calmly. "I didn't do this." "You did. The HOA's insurance covered replanting my orchard, soil remediation, and new fencing. The HOA itself paid the civil penalties and my attorney's fees through special assessments. The city redesigned Maple Crest's drainage system, with the Kensington Detention Basin as its centerpiece, Mara's front yard. They installed a massive concrete culvert. Slicing right through her circular driveway, half her lawn became a tiered retention basin. A public utility easement was recorded, meaning city crews could show up anytime unannounced. Her luxury model home became the charming residence, adjacent to a glorified stormwater treatment facility. Her property was subjected to quarterly inspections for 3 years. Every heavy rain brought city trucks plowing through her flower beds. The HOA 8 fines, higher insurance premiums, and 3 years of regulatory oversight. Residents paid special assessments. Mara was removed from the board and permanently banned from serving again. She accepted a plea deal. On a misdemeanor forgery charge, the judge assigned 50 hours of community service and environmental restoration. She stood in the courtroom, face pale. "Just make it stop," she whispered to her lawyer. The judge peered at her over his glasses. Perhaps next time, Miss Kensington, you'll think twice before forging documents and destroying someone's livelihood. He brought down the gavel. Mara walked out with her head lowered, clutching her designer handbag. She glanced at me once and I saw it.